12:01 in the morning on January 31st, 2026, the United States government partly stopped working. Congress had not agreed on how to spend money on time, missing a deadline that night. This stop affected millions of Americans and hundreds of thousands of federal workers. Many government workers might not get paid, or their jobs might stop. This was not the first time the government closed. It happened just 2 months after the longest shutdown in American history. That one lasted 43 days in 2025. It caused many problems for the country. But this time, the reason for the shutdown was different. It started with something unexpected. Federal agents shot and killed people in Minneapolis, Minnesota. These serious shootings changed normal talks about money into a big national crisis. The agents were part of Operation Metro Surge, a large immigration operation. On January 7, 2026, an agent from ICE shot and killed Renee Good, a mother of 3. Her death caused public anger. Then, on January 24th, Federal Border Patrol agents shot and killed Alex Preddy, a nurse, at a protest in South Minneapolis. Videos showed Preddy held a phone, not a weapon. These events made many people angry. Protests grew across Minnesota and in other big cities. Leaders in Washington, D.C. had to pay attention. Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, said they would not fund the Department of Homeland Security without big changes.
They wanted agents to wear body cameras and not masks, and to stop certain random checks. At first, the White House did not agree. President Donald Trump leads the White House, and this is real. But as the deadline came very close, President Trump made a deal with Senate Democrats. He agreed to a temporary plan for the Department of Homeland Security. This plan would last for 2 weeks, allowing more time for talks. However, even with this deal, the government still shut down partly. The Senate passed the funding plan late on Friday night, but the House of Representatives was not in session to vote, so the government closed. It makes you wonder, how did these local events in one city become so powerful that they shut down the entire U.S. government? 2. A city in trouble. In Minneapolis, federal agents started Operation Metro Surge. This was a very big operation. More than 3,000 agents from groups like ICE and Border Patrol came to the city. Their job was to enforce immigration laws. This caused much worry among local people. On January 7, 2026, something terrible happened. An ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good. She was 37 years old and a mother of 3. Agents said the shooting was in self-defense, but local people wanted answers. They asked many questions about why Renee Good died. Just over 2 weeks later, on January 24th, there was another shocking shooting.
Federal Border Patrol agents killed Alex Preddy. He was 37 and worked as a nurse. Alex was at a protest against the agents' operations. Videos from people showed Alex holding only a phone, not a weapon. He was trying to help others. Agents sprayed him. Then, masked agents hit him, and shots were heard. These killings made many people very angry. Tension between federal agents and local citizens grew each day. People gathered in large protests, confronting the masked agents. They marched in the streets and cried out. The protests spread quickly. On January 23rd, people in Minnesota held a statewide general strike. They stopped work and school to show their anger. After Alex Preddy died, another general strike happened on January 30th. Local leaders spoke out strongly. The mayor of Minneapolis told federal agents to leave. The governor of Minnesota called the events organized brutality. Many people felt that something was very wrong. This anger was not just in Minneapolis. It spread to other cities across the country. The strong feelings and tragic deaths in Minneapolis were now too big to ignore. These explosive events were about to land on the desks of the most powerful people in the country, in Washington, D.C. 3. A big demand. In Washington, D.C., political leaders were under pressure. Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, took a strong stand. They announced they would not approve funds for the Department of Homeland Security, DHS.
This was their response to the serious incidents that happened in Minneapolis. Democrats demanded major changes to how federal immigration laws were enforced across the country. Chuck Schumer presented what he called the pillars of reform. He said officers should not wear masks during operations and must always have body cameras on and working. Another key demand was to stop roving patrols, where officers randomly stop people. Democrats also wanted clear rules for getting warrants before entering homes. They asked for a common code of conduct for all immigration agents and independent checks when there were issues. Senator Dick Durbin added that the government's focus should be on big crimes like drug smuggling, not on peaceful citizens. Initially, the White House rejected these conditions. A White House official on January 28 stated that tying legislative reforms to funding with only 2 days left would simply cause a partial government shutdown. They argued that discussions about immigration policy should happen separately from budget agreements. This created a classic political standoff, with the shutdown deadline getting closer. However, as Friday's deadline loomed, Democrats showed no signs of backing down. So President Donald Trump changed his approach. On Thursday, January 29th, he made a last-minute deal with Senate Democratic leaders. This agreement would provide money for most federal agencies until the end of the fiscal year in September. But the Department of Homeland Security would only receive funding for 2 more weeks. This short period was for talks on the needed immigration enforcement reforms. President Trump endorsed the deal on his Truth Social platform, asking both parties to give a very much needed bipartisan yes vote. This temporary solution relieved some pressure, yet a big question remained. Would this agreement actually get enough votes and pass in the Senate before time ran out? 4. A vote at night. The Senate gathered late on Friday night for a critical vote. Lawmakers hoped to pass a fragile deal that President Donald Trump had worked on with Senate leaders. This plan aimed to fund most government operations through the fiscal year and give the Department of Homeland Security temporary funding for 2 more weeks. But the session quickly turned dramatic, filled with uncertainty. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, suddenly stopped the process. He placed a hold on the legislation, meaning no vote could happen. Graham had his own important demands. He wanted Senate Majority Leader John Thune to promise future votes on his priorities. First, he insisted on a vote for his bill that aimed to end sanctuary cities, which often do not fully cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Second, Graham demanded a vote on controversial Arctic frost provisions. These rules would allow members of Congress to sue the government if federal investigators accessed their phone records without their knowledge. The clock ticked loudly, nearing midnight on Friday, January 31st, 2026. The tension in the chamber grew with each passing minute.
everyone feared that the critical funding deal would collapse, leading to a government shutdown. After intense discussions, Senator Thune finally secured Graham's agreement. Thune promised that Graham's requested votes would take place. With these assurances, Graham lifted his hold, clearing the way for the vote. The Senate proceeded to vote on the five-bill funding package. It passed with a strong bipartisan majority, 71 votes to 29. This wide support brought a sense of relief to many. It seemed the government would avoid a shutdown, at least for now. However, this relief was short-lived. A massive, unexpected obstacle quickly appeared. The House of Representatives was not in session. Its members were in recess. This meant they could not vote on the Senate's passed bill immediately. House Speaker Mike Johnson soon confirmed the bad news. He announced that the House would not return to vote until Monday, February 2nd at the earliest. Because of this, Johnson stated clearly that the government would shut down.
He described it as a short shutdown situation, but it meant that at 12:01 a.m. January 31st, the federal government would partially close, despite the Senate's late-night efforts. 5. What is closed? The clock passed midnight on January 31, 2026. The U.S. government entered a partial shutdown. This meant some parts of the government stopped working because they did not have money. Many federal departments were now affected. These included the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, State, and Transportation. Also affected were Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Labor, Education, and the Treasury. Millions of Americans and federal workers felt the impact. However, not all services stopped. Some parts of the government had received money earlier. For example, important food programs like SNAP, which helps about 42 million Americans monthly, continued. This was a relief, as it avoided a crisis during the last shutdown in 2025, when these benefits were at risk. Military members also continued to get their pay, ensuring their service was recognized. For many federal workers, this shutdown brought hard times. People like air traffic controllers are called essential. They must work to keep flights safe, but they do not get paid during the shutdown. This creates serious financial stress for their families, who must live without a paycheck. It can also cause problems for travelers. During the long shutdown in 2025, the Department of Transportation had to reduce flights at 40 major airports. Many flights were canceled nationwide because of staffing problems. Federal contractors also face difficulty. Unlike direct federal employees, they usually do not receive back pay after a shutdown, leading to potential layoffs. This partial shutdown was less severe than the last one, which ended just 2 months ago. That record 43-day shutdown in November 2025 caused huge problems. It furloughed about 750,000 federal workers daily. 1.4 million essential workers worked without pay. The economy lost billions of dollars, and food pantries saw a 300% increase in people needing help. This new shutdown, while serious, was not as devastating. We have seen the immediate effects of this shutdown. Some services are closed, and workers face financial worries. But how did government shutdowns become a common and harmful part of American politics in the first place? 7. A history of problems. Government shutdowns are not an old problem in America. Before the year 1980, federal agencies usually kept working, even when funding was late. This changed after legal opinions in 1980 and 1981. These opinions stated that government agencies could not continue operating without Congress giving clear permission. Since then, shutdowns have happened 15 times, often stopping work for many federal employees. These closures have become more common and tend to last longer. The longest shutdown ever ended just 2 months ago in late 2025. It lasted for a record 43 days, breaking the old record of 35 days from President Donald Trump's first term in office. That 43-day shutdown caused many serious problems across the country. It happened because of a fight over expanded healthcare subsidies, showing that shutdowns are often about big policy disagreements, not just money. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers had to go without pay for over a month. About 1.4 million essential workers still had to report to their jobs, but they received no paychecks. The Congressional Budget Office reported that the country lost at least $7 billion in economic activity due to this shutdown. These economic losses were not temporary. Much of this money was gone forever, even after the government reopened. The human cost was also very high. Food pantries saw many more people needing help, including military families who struggled without their income. One food pantry helping military families in Kansas saw 300% more visitors asking for food. Air travel also faced big issues. 40 large airports had to reduce flights because there were not enough air traffic controllers working, as they were essential but unpaid. Many flights were delayed, and thousands were canceled. Important food assistance for about 42 million Americans, known as SNAP benefits, faced a major crisis when funding ran out. This created a lot of worry and hardship for countless families. These frequent shutdowns show deep disagreements in politics today. They strain government resources and hurt its ability to hire good people. These events show how divided American politics has become, making it hard for leaders to agree on basic things. The country often faces these big problems because politicians cannot find common ground. With so much history of shutdowns causing pain and damage to the public and the economy, many people wonder what will happen now. How is this current political fight impacting President Trump and what his administration wants to achieve? The political storm. The political storm in Washington became more intense. Inside the Republican Party, some senators showed concern. Senator Thom Tillis from North Carolina openly stated that the events in Minneapolis were hurting the party's image. He pointed out that Republicans were losing support on immigration, an area where they usually led. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska also joined Tillis in calling for Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to resign, blaming her for how the situation was handled. These calls showed division among Republicans. President Donald Trump's words also became stronger, adding to the tension. Earlier, he had talked about wanting to de-escalate the situation in Minnesota, but then he changed his tone. In social media posts, Trump called Alex Preddy the nurseotide, an agitator, and even an insurrectionist. He also shared images of a gun that federal officials claimed was found at the scene. Trump questioned why local police did not help federal officers, even though videos showed Preddy holding only a phone. This mix of messages created more anger and made the situation worse. Local leaders in Minnesota fought back hard against the federal government. Governor Tim Walz was very clear. He said the federal actions in his state were not just about enforcing immigration laws anymore. He called it a campaign of organized brutality.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey famously told federal immigration agents to leave his city. State officials took legal steps too. A federal judge issued an order stopping agents from the Department of Homeland Security from using pepper spray or certain non-deadly weapons on people protesting peacefully. Another judge held hearings about keeping important evidence from the shooting incidents safe.
These legal battles showed a major conflict over who holds power in America, the federal government or state and local authorities. A temporary agreement had opened a 2-week window for talks. During this time, leaders in Washington had to find new ways to handle immigration enforcement. But with President Trump's strong words and the firm stance of state and local leaders, the two sides seemed very far apart. Many people asked if a real solution was even possible before the next deadline arrived. The clock was ticking, and failure could mean another government shutdown. 8. A clock is ticking. The 2-week period for negotiating Homeland Security funding had now begun, and the clock was truly ticking. This short time presented an incredibly high-stakes challenge for all sides. Speaker Johnson, leading the House of Representatives, faced a very difficult path. His Republican Party held a razor-thin majority, with only 218 members to 213. This meant he could afford to lose no more than 2 Republican votes on any crucial decision, making every vote a struggle. Johnson found himself caught between different forces. On one side were conservative hardliners within his own party, notably the Freedom Caucus. These members had already clearly stated their opposition to separating Homeland Security funding from the larger government budget.
They insisted that all of Homeland Security must be fully funded and warned against giving Democrats control over this funding. On the other side were the determined Democrats who had very specific and strong demands for reform. Democratic leaders, including Senator Chuck Schumer, firmly declared they would not support extending Homeland Security funding without major changes. Their key demands included requiring federal immigration agents to wear body cameras and to operate without masks during their actions. They also called for an end to roving patrols, where agents stopped people without specific warrants, and demanded uniform rules for using force. Crucially, they sought truly independent investigations into agent misconduct, not just internal agency reviews. Many Republicans, however, resisted these demands. Senator Markwayne Mullin, for instance, stated that they would not prevent federal immigration agents from performing their duties. Reaching a common agreement on these highly emotional and complex issues in such a short time frame was extremely difficult. The previous chapters showed a history of political division. This intense pressure made it very clear that another government shutdown, potentially more severe than the partial one already started, was a very real and looming possibility when the new deadline hit around February 13th. This challenging situation highlighted a fundamental test for American democracy.
It questioned the very ability of the government to function effectively and make collective decisions in an era of deep political division. Could elected leaders from both parties truly find a way to compromise and ensure the government worked for its people? Or would the cycle of last-minute deals and temporary solutions simply continue, leading to more crises? What do you think will happen next in these important talks? Will a deal be made in time?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world,